The whispers followed Willow Faulkner like shadows as she stepped off the stagecoach into the dusty streets of Coloma, California, in the spring of 1854. Gold rush fever still gripped the town, but it wasn't fortune that had brought her to this frontier outpost, it was escape. Her face remained hidden behind a delicate lace veil attached to her simple bonnet, the black fabric stark against her pale blue traveling dress. She clutched her small valise tightly as curious onlookers stared, their whispers carrying on the warm afternoon breeze. "Another one of them mail-order brides, I reckon," a voice murmured as she passed. "Strange one, keeping her face covered like that," another replied. Willow kept her chin high despite their scrutiny. 5 years since the accident that had changed everything. 5 years of hiding her scars from the world. Now she stood in a town of strangers, about to meet the man who had answered her advertisement in the matrimonial news, a man who knew nothing of her disfigurement. The Coloma Hotel stood at the end of the street, a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch where men in various states of trail dust gathered, smoking and talking. Willow paused, gathering her courage before approaching the establishment. According to their correspondence, Adam Yates would be waiting for her there. As she approached the hotel, a tall figure detached itself from the porch railing. The man wore simple clothes, a cotton shirt, worn denim pants, and dusty boots. His dark hat shadowed his face, but she could see a strong jaw lined with a neatly trimmed beard. He removed his hat as she approached, revealing brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Miss Faulkner?" he asked, his voice deep but gentle. Willow nodded, finding her voice. "Mr. Yates, I presume," he smiled then, a warm expression that reached his kind eyes, she noted with relief. "Adam, please." He extended a hand to take her valise. "Welcome to Coloma." She surrendered her bag, careful to keep distance between them. "Thank you for meeting me." His gaze lingered on her veiled face, but he made no comment about it. Instead, he gestured toward the hotel. "You must be tired from your journey. I've arranged a room for you here. We can talk more once you've rested." Inside, the hotel lobby buzzed with activity. Miners, merchants, and travelers gathered in small clusters, their conversations creating a backdrop of noise. Adam led her to the reception desk, where a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose looked up expectantly. "George, this is Miss Faulkner," Adam said. The innkeeper's eyes flicked to Willow's veiled face with poorly concealed curiosity before he forced a smile. "Welcome to Coloma, miss. We have your room ready upstairs." Willow signed the register, aware of the stares from others in the lobby. Even in a town like Coloma, where people came from all walks of life seeking new beginnings, she was still an oddity. Adam cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could meet for supper, say 6 o'clock in the dining room." "That would be fine, Mr. Yates." "Adam," she corrected herself. "Until then." He nodded politely before stepping back, allowing her to follow the innkeeper up the narrow staircase. The room was small but clean, a bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a small window overlooking the busy street below. When the door closed behind her, Willow released a shaky breath and removed her bonnet, the veil coming away with it. She approached the small mirror hanging above the washstand, fingers tracing the scars that ran from her right temple down to her jaw, angry red marks that the doctor had assured would fade with time but never truly disappear. The fire that had claimed her parents had marked her in ways beyond grief. As she unpacked her few possessions, Willow wondered what would happen when Adam discovered the truth. Their correspondence over the past 6 months had been pleasant enough. He seemed an intelligent, thoughtful man who worked as both a rancher and the town's part-time deputy. He'd written of his small ranch outside of town, of his dreams to expand it, of his loneliness since his sister had married and moved away. She had been honest about everything except her appearance, mentioning only that she wore a veil for personal reasons. He hadn't pressed the matter in his letters, but how would he react when faced with the reality? At 6 o'clock precisely, Willow descended the stairs, her veil once again in place. Adam waited in the lobby, now wearing a clean shirt and vest. He stood when he saw her, offering his arm with a smile. "You look refreshed, Miss Faulkner," he said. "Please call me Willow," she replied, placing her hand lightly on his arm. The dining room was busy, and Willow felt the familiar weight of stares as Adam guided her to a table in the corner. A young waitress approached, her eyes widening slightly at Willow's veil before she recovered her composure. "Evening, Deputy Yates," she greeted. "What can I bring for you and your guest?" "Whatever Mrs. Jenkins has prepared tonight will be fine for both of us, Emma," Adam replied smoothly. When the girl had gone, he turned his attention back to Willow. "I hope you don't mind my ordering. The options are usually limited, but the food is good." "Not at all." Willow adjusted her veil discreetly, ensuring it stayed in place. "You mentioned you're a deputy," Adam nodded. "Part-time." "Mostly I run my ranch, but Sheriff Dawson needed help after the gold rush brought more people to town. It's usually quiet work settling disputes between miners, escorting drunks to the jail to sleep it off." They talked easily as they ate, Willow managing to take small bites by lifting her veil just enough. Adam politely averted his gaze during these moments, focusing instead on his own plate or the room around them. He told her about his 10 years in Coloma, arriving just after the initial gold discovery at Sutter's Mill, about building his small ranch instead of chasing elusive fortunes in the riverbed. "And your family?" Willow asked. "You mentioned a sister in your letters." "Rebecca lives in San Francisco now with her husband and their 2 children. My parents passed on back in Ohio before I came west." He hesitated. "And yours? You wrote they were gone, but not much else." Willow's hand rose instinctively to touch her veil. "They died in a fire 5 years ago." "Our home in Boston. I was the only one who made it out." Understanding dawned in his eyes, his gaze flicking briefly to her veil before returning to meet hers through the lace. "I'm sorry." The conversation moved to lighter topics: books they both enjoyed, music, his descriptions of the countryside around Coloma. As they finished their meal, the door to the dining room burst open, and 3 men stumbled in, loud and clearly intoxicated from an evening at the saloon across the street. "Well, if it ain't our esteemed deputy," one of them called out, spotting Adam. "And who's the mysterious lady?" The man, heavy-set with a thick beard, started toward their table. Adam stood, his posture shifting subtly. "Evening, Hank. You and your friends might want to call it a night." "Now don't be unfriendly, deputy. We just want to meet the lady." Hank's bloodshot eyes fixed on Willow's veil. "What are you hiding under there, miss? Too pretty for the likes of us common folk." Willow tensed, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Adam stepped between her and the approaching men, his voice low but carrying a clear authority. "The lady deserves her privacy, and you need to move along." "Or what?" challenged another of the men, a lanky individual with a scar above his eye. "Or I'll personally escort all 3 of you to the jail to contemplate your manners until morning," Adam replied evenly. A tense moment passed before Hank raised his hands in mock surrender. "No need for that. We know when we ain't welcome." He tipped his hat sarcastically toward Willow. "Pardon our intrusion, madam." The 3 men backed away, muttering among themselves as they left the dining room. Adam returned to his seat, his expression apologetic. "I'm sorry about that. Most folks here are decent, but gold and whiskey sometimes bring out the worst." "You handled it well," Willow observed, "though I fear I've made you a subject of gossip by arriving in town as I did." Adam's gaze was steady. "People will talk regardless. It's the nature of small towns." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Willow, I don't mean to pry, but I should tell you your veil changes nothing for me. I invited you here based on your letters, your thoughts, your spirit, the rest. It doesn't matter." Her breath caught at his directness. "You say that now, but I mean it," he interrupted gently. "Whatever you're hiding, whenever you're ready to show me, or if you never are, I made my choice when I asked you to come to Coloma." Willow stared at him, searching for any sign of insincerity but finding none. "You're a rare man, Adam Yates, just practical." A small smile touched his lips. Now, would you like to see the town tomorrow? It's not Boston, but it has its charms. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Willow dressed carefully in a pale green dress, securing her veil before venturing downstairs. Adam waited in the lobby as promised, and together they set out into the bustling main street of Coloma. The town was alive with activity, wagons laden with supplies rumbling past, miners heading to the hills with their equipment, merchants opening their shops for the day's business. Adam pointed out the important landmarks: the general store, the assay office, the small church at the end of the street, and the schoolhouse where the town's few children received their education. And there's the sheriff's office where I spend some of my time. He indicated a small wooden building with a sign marking it as the town jail. As they walked, Willow noticed the stares and whispers that followed them, but Adam seemed either oblivious or deliberately ignored them. He greeted people by name, introducing Willow as Miss Faulkner from Boston without elaboration. At the general store, the proprietor's wife, a plump woman named Mrs. Henderson, couldn't contain her curiosity. "Will you be staying long in Coloma, Miss Faulkner?" she asked, eyeing the veil as she wrapped the hard candies Adam had purchased for Willow. "That depends," Willow replied politely but firmly. Mrs. Henderson waited for elaboration, and when none came, she pressed on. "It must be difficult to see through that veil. Is it a custom from back east?" Before Willow could respond, Adam smoothly interjected, "Mrs. Henderson makes the finest apple pies in the county. Perhaps we can sample one before you leave town." The woman beamed at the compliment, momentarily distracted. "Well, you bring Miss Faulkner by on Sunday after church. I'll have one fresh baked." As they left the store, Willow gave Adam a grateful look he couldn't see. "Thank you for the rescue. People are curious by nature," he said with a shrug. "Most mean no harm, but they forget their manners sometimes." They continued their tour, eventually stopping at a small cafe for lunch. As they ate, Adam spoke of his plans for his ranch, his hope to expand his cattle herd come spring, the orchard he'd started planting the previous year. "It's not much now," he admitted, "but I have good water rights and fertile land. In a few years, when the fruit trees mature, it could be something special." "You sound like a man with deep roots," Willow observed. Adam nodded. "I came west looking for gold like everyone else, but I found something better, a place that felt like home." He studied her for a moment. "What about you? What were you hoping to find by answering a stranger's advertisement and traveling across the country?" Willow considered her answer carefully. "After the fire, there was nothing left for me in Boston except memories and pitying glances. I thought perhaps in a place where no one knew me before, I might find a way to live rather than simply exist. And have you found that here in just one day?" His question was gentle, without expectation. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly, "but I think there's possibility here, and that's more than I've felt in a long while." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. A horse came galloping down the street, its rider slumped forward, barely holding on. Adam was on his feet immediately, rushing outside with Willow close behind. The horse stopped in the middle of the street, and the rider, a young man no more than 20, slid from the saddle, collapsing in the dust. Blood stained his shirt along his side. Adam knelt beside him as a crowd gathered. "What happened, son?" "Ambush," the young man gasped. "3 men robbed the supply wagon, shot Mr. Jenkins, need the doctor." "Where?" Adam demanded, already looking for someone in the crowd to send for help. 5 miles east, along the Sacramento Road. Adam turned to a man in the gathering crowd. "Bill, get Doc Simmons, then find the sheriff and tell him what's happened." To another he said, "Sam, I need to borrow your horse." Within minutes, Adam had mounted a sturdy bay gelding. He looked down at Willow standing at the edge of the crowd. "I'm sorry to cut our day short," he said, regret evident in his voice. "I have to go." "Of course," she replied, understanding the urgency. "Be careful, Adam." He nodded once before spurring the horse into action, galloping east out of town. Willow watched until he disappeared from view, aware of the curious glances still directed her way. The afternoon stretched endlessly as Willow waited in her hotel room, occasionally going downstairs to see if there was any news. The town buzzed with the excitement of the robbery, rumors flying about who might be responsible. By evening, word arrived that Sheriff Dawson and Adam had found the supply wagon and its driver, Mr. Jenkins, who had been wounded but would survive. They had tracked the robbers to an abandoned mining camp but lost their trail as darkness fell. The sheriff had returned to town while Adam remained to watch the camp, suspecting the robbers might return. Willow ate a solitary dinner in the hotel dining room, more aware than ever of her outsider status as conversations around her speculated about the day's events. When she retired to her room, sleep proved elusive as she worried about Adam's safety. Morning came with no word, and Willow fought rising anxiety as she dressed for the day. She had just finished securing her veil when a knock sounded at her door. "Miss Faulkner." It was the innkeeper's voice. "Deputy Yates has returned. He's asking to see you downstairs when you're ready." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you. I'll be right down." She found Adam in the hotel lobby, looking tired and dusty from his night outdoors. A fresh cut marked his forehead and he held his left arm somewhat gingerly. "You're hurt," she said by way of greeting. "It's nothing serious," he assured her, though the weariness in his eyes suggested otherwise. "We caught the robbers trying to return to their hideout before dawn." There was a brief struggle, but they're locked up now. "You should see the doctor," Willow insisted, noting how he winced when he moved his arm. "Later, perhaps. I wanted to see you first to apologize for leaving so abruptly yesterday." "There's no need for apologies. You were doing your duty." Adam smiled slightly. "Still, I had plans to show you my ranch today. I'd understand if you'd rather postpone, given everything." Willow considered him for a moment. "If you're certain you're well enough, I'd still like to see it." His smile broadened. "I'll arrange for a buggy. Give me an hour." True to his word, Adam returned with a small buggy and a pair of matched sorrels. They set out from town on a well-maintained road that followed the river before branching off into the foothills. The landscape opened up before them, rolling grasslands dotted with oak trees, the distant mountains providing a majestic backdrop. "It's beautiful," Willow commented, breathing in the clean, sage-scented air. "Wait until you see the view from the house," Adam replied, a note of pride in his voice. They crested a small rise, and the ranch came into view, a modest but well-built cabin with a wide front porch, a large barn, corrals for livestock, and beyond them, neat rows of saplings that must be the beginning of his orchard. A small creek ran through the property, its banks lined with willows and cottonwoods. "Welcome to the Rocking Y," Adam said as he guided the horses toward the house. As they pulled up to the cabin, a dog came bounding from the porch, a black and white border collie that barked enthusiastically as they approached. "That's Scout," Adam explained as he set the brake and jumped down from the buggy. "He's friendly, just excited for company." He came around to help Willow down, his hands strong and steady at her waist as he lifted her to the ground. Even through the fabric of her dress, she felt the warmth of his touch, and it lingered after he stepped back. Scout approached cautiously, sniffing at Willow's skirts before allowing her to pat his head. "He approves," Adam observed with a smile. "He's a good judge of character." The cabin was surprisingly comfortable inside a large main room with a stone fireplace, simple but sturdy furniture, shelves lined with books, and touches that spoke of care and attention. Dried wildflowers sat in a vase on the table, colorful quilts adorned the chairs, and the windows were framed with checkered curtains. "My sister's influence," Adam explained, noticing Willow's interest in these details. She insisted a home needed a woman's touch, even if the woman was only an occasional visitor. He showed her around the property, pointing out where he planned to expand the house, the vegetable garden behind the cabin, the spring-fed well that provided fresh water year-round. As they walked toward the orchard, Willow could see his passion for this land in every gesture, every description. "These were planted just last year," he said as they walked between rows of small fruit trees. "Apples, pears, peaches. It'll be 5 years before they produce much, but it's an investment in the future." The words hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken meaning. An investment in the future, a future he was offering to share with her. They stopped at the edge of the orchard, looking back toward the house with the mountains rising beyond. The beauty of the scene was overwhelming, not the refined elegance of Boston, but something wilder, more honest. "What do you think?" Adam asked, watching her closely. "It's a wonderful place," she answered truthfully. "You've built something remarkable here." "It's still a work in progress," he said. "Like most worthwhile things." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Willow, I know we've only just met in person, but after our letters and these past days, I feel I know your heart, if not your face. I asked you to come to Coloma because I believed we could build a good life together." Her pulse quickened at his words. "Adam, please, let me finish," he said gently. "I understand why you might be hesitant. Starting a new life with a stranger is a risk, and I suspect your veil hides scars that run deeper than just the physical ones." Willow's hand rose instinctively to touch the lace covering her face. "Yes," she whispered. "I want you to know this," he continued, his voice steady and sure. "I don't need to see you to choose you, Willow. I've already made my choice based on who you are, not how you look." Tears pricked behind her eyes, blurring her vision through the veil. "You can't possibly mean that. You don't know what lies beneath this lace." "Then show me," he said simply. "Or don't, it won't change how I feel." A moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and fear. Slowly, Willow raised her hands to the ties securing her veil. With trembling fingers, she untied the delicate knot and lifted the lace away from her face. The scarring was worse on the right side, a web of healed burns that pulled at her skin, distorting what had once been a smooth cheek. The damage continued down her neck, disappearing beneath the high collar of her dress. Her right eyebrow was partially missing, and that eye opened slightly less than the left. She kept her gaze lowered, afraid to see revulsion or pity in his expression. When he remained silent, she forced herself to look up. There was no disgust in his eyes, no pity either, only a gentle understanding and something else, something that made her heart race. Slowly, he reached out, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't move, his fingertips brushed lightly against her scarred cheek. "Thank you," he said softly, "for trusting me. You're not repulsed." She could hardly believe his calm acceptance. "By what marks that show your courage, your survival?" He shook his head. "Willow, everyone carries scars, some are just more visible than others." She hadn't expected this simple, profound acceptance. In Boston, even friends and distant relatives had struggled to hide their shock, their discomfort. Suitors had disappeared, acquaintances had drifted away, leaving her isolated in her grief and shame. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, overwhelmed by his reaction. "You don't need to say anything right now." He gently took the veil from her hands, folding it carefully before returning it to her. "This is yours to wear or not, as you choose, here or anywhere we go together." They walked back to the house in a companionable silence, Willow's veil tucked into her pocket rather than covering her face. Inside, Adam prepared a simple meal, and they ate together at his table, talking easily of books they'd read, memories of their childhoods, hopes for the future. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain. Adam hitched the horses to the buggy once more, and they started back toward town, the first heavy drops beginning to fall as they reached the outskirts of Coloma. By the time they reached the hotel, the rain was coming down in earnest. They dashed inside, laughing as they shook water from their clothes. In the lobby, several guests turned to look at them, and Willow realized with a start that she had forgotten to replace her veil. She froze, suddenly aware of the curious and startled glances directed at her scarred face. Adam noticed her distress and instinctively moved closer, his presence steady and reassuring beside her. "Miss Faulkner," the innkeeper called from behind the desk, "there's a letter for you." Came on the afternoon stage. Grateful for the distraction, Willow approached the desk to retrieve the envelope. She recognized her cousin Aliner's handwriting immediately and tucked the letter into her pocket to read later. "Thank you for today," she said to Adam as they stood at the foot of the stairs. "For everything." "The pleasure was mine," he replied. "Might I call on you tomorrow? There's a social at the church I thought you might enjoy." The idea of appearing in public without her veil terrified her, but the thought of hiding again after the freedom of the afternoon seemed equally impossible. "I would like that." In her room, Willow opened Aliner's letter to find surprising news. The family lawyer had finally settled her parents' estate, and contrary to what they had believed, there was a modest inheritance after all the debts were paid enough to provide Willow with independence if she chose it. Aliner urged her to return to Boston, offering her home as a permanent residence, insisting that family should stay together in times of hardship. The letter was kind but carried an undercurrent of expectation that Willow would naturally want to return to what was familiar, even if that familiarity included isolation and pitying glances. Willow sat by the window, watching raindrops trace patterns on the glass as she considered her options. For the first time in 5 years, she had a choice that wasn't dictated by necessity or limited resources. She could return to Boston, to the safety of the known, or she could stay in Coloma, in this wild country where a man could look at her scarred face and see only her. When Adam called for her the next day, she was waiting in the hotel lobby without her veil. He smiled when he saw her, a smile that warmed his eyes and made her heart beat faster. "You look beautiful," he said simply. She knew he meant it, impossibly. "I received a letter yesterday." "From my cousin in Boston." A shadow crossed his face. "Will you be returning east?" "No," she said, the decision solidifying as she spoke it aloud. "My life is here now, if you'll still have me." The joy that illuminated his expression was answer enough, but he took her hands in his as he replied, "I would be honored to have you as my wife, Willow Faulkner." The church social wasn't easy. There were stares and whispers, awkward pauses in conversation when people didn't know where to look. But there was also Mrs. Henderson with her promised apple pie, the school teacher Miss Thompson, who spoke enthusiastically about the books on Willow's reading list, and Sheriff Dawson, who shook her hand firmly and thanked her for giving our deputy a reason to smile. By the end of the evening, Willow's face ached from smiling more than she had in years, and she knew this place could become home. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church at the end of Coloma's Main Street. Adam's sister Rebecca traveled from San Francisco with her husband and children, embracing Willow with genuine warmth. A surprising number of townspeople attended, their initial curiosity about the veiled lady having given way to acceptance of the woman beneath. Willow wore no veil on her wedding day. Standing beside Adam before the minister, she felt the weight of years of hiding lift from her shoulders. When they exchanged their vows, his eyes never left hers, seeing past the scars to the woman within. "I choose you," he whispered as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Today and always." Life at the rocking Y unfolded in seasons: the blistering summers, the mild autumns, the wet winters, and the glorious explosion of wildflowers each spring. The house expanded to include 2 more rooms, the orchard began to bear fruit in their 3rd year of marriage, and the cattle herd grew steadily under Adam's careful management. Willow found her place in the community gradually, first helping at church socials, then occasionally substituting at the schoolhouse when Miss Thompson was ill, and finally starting a small lending library from their growing collection of books. In their 2nd year, their son James was born, followed 2 years later by their daughter Catherine. The children grew up knowing their mother's face as simply that their mother's face, no more remarkable than their father's eyes or their own small fingers and toes. On their 5th anniversary, Adam presented Willow with a mirror, a beautiful piece with a silver frame. She hadn't owned one since the fire, relying on Adam's small shaving mirror when necessary. "Why?" she asked, running her fingers over the intricate design. "Because you should see what I see," he answered. "Not just the scars, but all of you, your strength, your kindness, the life we've built together." That evening, as the children slept and the house settled into nighttime quiet, Willow stood before the mirror. The scars remained, faded somewhat with time but still clearly visible. Yet they no longer defined her. She saw beyond them to the woman she had become: wife, mother, friend, respected member of the community. Adam's arms encircled her from behind, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. "What do you see?" he asked softly. "Us," she replied, leaning back against him. "Just us." Outside, the orchards Adam had planted when he first arrived in Coloma stood laden with fruit, a testament to patience and faith in the future. Inside, the home they had built together sheltered their sleeping children, their shared books and memories, their love that had begun with letters exchanged between strangers. And in that moment, Willow knew that true vision had nothing to do with eyes at all, but everything to do with the heart that sees beyond surfaces to the soul beneath. Adam had seen her, truly seen her, when she had been invisible to the world, and in doing so, he had helped her see herself again. "I love you," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him directly, no barriers between them. "And I love you," he answered, his gaze as steady and true as it had been the day she first revealed her face to him. "Scars and all, always."